Hey, welcome to today's episode of Challenges, or Boss Talk. I'm sorry, Boss Talk. It's going to be a continuation of some previous episodes, some battery emergency stuff, lithium-ion battery emergency stuff that actually really kind of stemmed from a fire that we had in Bethesda. But before we get started, I would like to pause for a moment and remind everybody to keep the members of Baltimore City Fire Department in their thoughts and prayers through this trying time, that they're all going through up there. Take this opportunity to talk about it. Talk about it at the lineup table. Talk about it at, a duty night. And have some good, nice, hard conversations about that thing. Also, I would like to touch on Chief Kerrigan's email that came out today. It did come out after lineup this morning that touched on or might affect the people that are working Friday. If you're interested in going up or participating in some of the needs from the city, there is a jot form, I believe, that they're soliciting interest. So if you have interest or you're a firefighter and a group of you have interest, certainly utilize your officer, fill out that jot form. That jot form, I would only guess, is probably not guaranteeing anything, but at least putting your name in the hat saying, hey, we're willing to help. I'm assuming all of those types of things are going to be sorted out at some point this week. So, starting today, let me introduce everybody. At the end of the table, I have Captain Machala helping me moderate today. To my right, Captain Riley, Company 2 on the A shift. Took over a hell of a shift there from me. And then Captain Foss from Company 28 on the B shift. He is here today really as the Hazmat team leader to provide some information from that stance. So welcome, guys. Thank you for coming in. Thanks for taking the time. Captain Riley, your fifth time here, man. You're a regular. Third time specifically talking about lithium-ion batteries, right? So of all people, you ran a fire in Bethesda that involved this. So let's start with that fire. Tell us a little bit about it.
All right, yeah, so just came out as a box alarm for smoke coming from an apartment.
This is in downtown Bethesda.
And right behind Fire Station 6 is
Okay.
basically where it sits on Chevy Chase Drive. 4800 Chevy Chase Drive. Reported smoke coming from an apartment on the third floor. So companies got on the scene, nothing evident. Started stretching in, and it was, at the time, I guess Lieutenant Hart, he might have been Captain Hart now by then, and Lieutenant Morton. They were on the third floor, found an apartment, had smoke coming from around it, forced the door, got the line in place, and Truck 6 held the door until the line was ready to go. We stretched up behind them. We actually threw our racks out the window, got hooked up there. Once they forced the door and opened it up and the line was ready, smoke in the hallway, they went into the apartment, and they actually had a small fire. It was a chair on fire, and extinguished the same. We started going into the apartment, and there's a picture of the chair, so if you guys want to show that, that was what was on fire. And then also, if you want to show that one picture with the area around it, the fire room kind of deal, fairly small fire. Was out probably less than 20 gallons of water probably. By the time I got in there, the bulk of the fire was knocked. They started sweeping around, seeing what else was on fire, checking for extension and everything like that. And then that's when this lithium-ion battery did what it did and started to go. It was in thermal runaway, and then the rest of the cells started basically exploding. And even, given the training and going through the training previously with the Hazmat team, it was still a shocking event, I guess you could say, to see these cells fly across the room, basically in front of you, hitting the wall, bouncing off, landing on fire. And that's when we knew it was a lithium-ion battery that we were dealing with.
All right, so I have a couple of questions leading up to that, I guess. Nothing evident, you said.
Nope.
When you went into the building lobby, Any odors?
Nope.
You know, you can smell food on the stove.
Yeah,
right?
nothing.
You hear returns all the time. It smells like food on the stove. So
Yeah.
no different smell.
Nope.
Not any in the hallway, in the stairwell. Nothing.
Not
No
until
smoke in the hallway.
Not until they started actually popping the door. Then there was no smoke prior to that. Company 6 had black soot around the doorway. Like,
Okay.
they knew there was a fire behind
They knew
that.
there was fire behind that door.
Yeah, so once they had it popped, then obviously smoke started taking over the hallway. So
So we're not changing any. Not that I would expect you all to do, but we didn't change any tactics or anything
Nah,
like
'cause,
that.
I mean,
Hooked up on the fire floor, floor below, whatever.
Yeah, 'cause-
Whatever was decided was decided.
Yeah.
Stretched the line, SCBA, all normal things.
Yep, everything that we normally do. Like I said, we don't even know this is a lithium-ion battery, right?
Okay.
We have no idea.
So make way into the apartment. You're like,
Yep.
hey, this is a small fire. How about visibility?
It was zero. When they
No
originally-
visibility.
Yeah, when they
But
got
no
in there.
smoke in the hallway when you were.
Nope, it was all held basically into that apartment. I
Okay.
mean, there was no windows open, anything like that. So it was all held in that apartment and just contained all the smoke and everything. No occupants inside the apartment. They were
Anybody
gone.
tell you meet anybody in the hallway or downstairs, in the lobby, front yard, whatever?
I believe one of the neighbors in the adjacent apartment kind of like pointed them in the right
Hey,
direction.
apartment
Yeah.
203 or
Yeah,
30,
three
whatever it
something.
is,
Yeah.
is on
Yep.
fire.
Yep. So, yeah, and like I said, I mean, we treat it as a normal couch or
Potential room.
yeah, a chair or something on fire, and they extinguished it. And it wasn't until they actually started moving stuff around, basically, that these cells started to.
Okay, so we get
explode.
in the apartment, squirt
Yep.
some water.
Yep.
Fire goes out.
Yep.
No issue with initial extinguishment.
None.
Okay.
None whatsoever.
So with these batteries in the past,
Mm-hmm.
has there been issues with extinguishment?
No, because we haven't had a large scale, I guess you could say, battery pack, right? We haven't had the Tesla style battery. We did have the scooters down in Company 1's area, but those were
I
extinguished.
thought we had a car. Didn't we have a car, Lincoln Navigator or something like that that was on?
I don't know about that
Not that
one.
I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah, so we haven't had a large scale battery. Now, obviously, we've had multiple of these batteries.
And we have,
Throughout.
what, Bob, you said 13 events, right? Yeah. Since we've kept track, we've had 13 of these fires in the county.
Yep, and unfortunately, right now, we don't have a dispatch, so, based on the batteries, and I'm really not tracking them, because a lot of times you're calling me after the fact as the hazmat team, hey, we need your guys' help with this component of the incident.
Okay. So if you have questions, the chat is being monitored. Feel free to type any questions to the moderator. So, okay, we get in, we extinguish the fire.
Yep.
Then what happens?
So if we can, show that one picture that you have up now, and then switch to the kitchen once you show that. So, yep. So while we were operating in there, started ventilation and started searching around a little bit more. Squad did some searching, and we actually went into the kitchen, and we noticed this right here, that one of the cells that actually shot across the room landed underneath the dishwasher, and there was a whole bunch of rags stuffed underneath the dishwasher, lit the dishwasher off, and started burning that. So we had multiple different locations of
So to paint the
fires.
picture, what was originally on fire?
Just the chair. Just the
We know
chair
what
in
the
the room.
cause and
Yeah,
origin was?
it was the battery.
Okay, so there was a battery sitting under a
The
chair.
chair. Yep. So that thing
Lit the
start-
chair on fire.
Yep.
We extinguished the chair.
Yep.
Then there was some sort of thermal reaction,
Well,
thermal runaway. What are
Probably
we-
most likely
are
what
we
happened.
Guessing.
Yeah, most likely what would happen is probably a hook or a Halligan bar or something like that was sweeping around. Right. We're trying to open up that area because we can't really see good still. Right. There's still smoke in there. They had already taken a window, but our guess is they were opening up a little bit, hit it. That caused it to actually do its thing and explode, basically.
This
Shoot
the
them.
whole thing in the previous episodes that we've talked
Yeah.
about thermal runaway.
Yep, and actually expel.
Am I
these cells.
using the correct terminology? Thermal runaway.
Yes.
So we disturbed that.
Yes.
And then that thing
Shot
exploded.
out. Yes, and this pack. Can you show the picture of the actual light of what it was? Right there. So what it was that small piece, that gray piece on the right-hand side, that's the actual battery pack to a flash for a digital camera, a portable flash. And we're guessing that that thing has anywhere from 10 to 16 individual cells in it.
And by cells, we're saying
Those are the
batteries.
single cell, looks like the AA battery, is
Okay.
what it looks like. And what they do is they combine them all together, and they have them in there as a group. And basically, it's called a pack. And once one of those goes bad or goes into thermal runaway, it goes to everybody else and just starts this chain reaction, basically, and the next one goes and the next one goes. So we're thinking that that thing had anywhere from 10 to 16 individual cells inside it.
So this isn't very big. I mean, I'm looking at it. It's very,
No. So your
that
Milwaukee,
looks like the size of a football.
yeah, well, that as a whole, yes, and that battery pack is what has the cells in it, and that thing is extremely small. So you figure your M18 battery, Milwaukee battery pack, we believe that thing, when we took it apart, it had 18 individual cells in it.
Correct.
So if you think about that, right, like that's your regular battery pack, that thing has 18 individual cells. When one of those
is bad.
one of those goes bad, it sets off this chain reaction, and who knows when the next one goes, and if it catches on fire and goes into thermal runaway, then basically it explodes. We have some videos we can show later of us actually
we
doing
will
it.
in just a second. So we think somebody hit this with something. They might
Yeah,
have kicked it. They might
yeah.
have moved a piece of
Like,
furniture.
like we
whatever
normally,
the case
like we
is.
normally do when we start opening up.
So you're standing in the room. All of
Yep.
a sudden, this thing
Yep, and
goes into thermal runaway.
shoots across, shoots out, expels across, hits the wall, actually goes through a lamp shade, goes through it, hits the wall, and lands at my feet. And at that point, that's when I was like, okay, I know what we're
Now
dealing
I
with
know
here.
what we have.
And Lieutenant Morton said the exact same thing. He was like, yep. So we had a conversation inside. We let everybody know who was operating in the apartment, what we were dealing with, and we passed that information on to command.
Did you have any concerns for people's safety that were inside?
No, everybody was on SCBA. Like I said, there was still a decent amount of smoke in there. Nobody had started dropping SCBA or anything like that. So everybody was on air still, so there was no issues. We held off bringing anybody else in. So basically it was Engine 6, Truck 6, and I think Squad 1 was inside. The second line was Engine 7.
Squad guys probably weren't doing anything.
They were
Go on.
searching. So I had my crew just hold up basically in the hallway because we didn't need anybody else in there, small fire. And yeah, we kind of stood by at that point.
Okay.
So Brady, real quick, due diligence, I think, is important here, right? These cells can go off days later. So this small chair fire could have turned into an apartment fire multiple days later if we're
Yeah.
not putting in that time, effort, and energy to physically account for cells.
Certainly.
Right.
And I think that we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about the hazmat component or special operations, what they're bringing. But let's talk about some indicators from a unit officer standpoint. You know, I don't know that if I would have been able to recognize this while this is happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a quick question too about that. So this fire, we're used to hearing about, the thermal runaway that's causing the fire. So we think the fire was actually caused by something else, and then the thermal runaway occurred because that battery was heated, or you think that battery pack actually failed and started the
Yes,
fire, and then this
yes.
process just continued, basically?
Yep, so when FEI got there, they did their thing, obviously, and they felt the same way that this battery pack, it was charging, it was plugged in and charging, and it was next to a couple other laptops that were also charging. So they came up with the conclusion that it probably overcharged at some point, causing it to basically have abuse done and heat it up, causing the thermal runaway to occur. And most likely what happened is that thing blew up, lit the chair on fire, but some of them cells
Remained intact?
right,
Okay.
remained inside that battery pack until we
I
started
gotcha.
messing around with
Okay.
it. And then that's when
All right, that
the
makes sense.
secondary.
So when
occurred.
the smoke cleared
Mm-hmm.
and you realized, I guess you saw this thing explode, did we then also realize that there was multiple places that were on fire in the apartment?
So we
I mean,
didn't,
obviously the kitchen, the dishwasher in the kitchen,
yeah,
right?
so we noticed that after the fact. We had already looked through a couple places and there was no fire until that explosion occurred. That cell went underneath there, and then we actually went around the corner a little bit later, and we noticed it was already burned up again. That wasn't previously burned up when we got in.
Did you physically see the cell? Like you physically saw them shoot
Yes.
everywhere like
Yes.
that?
Yep, yep.
So Bob, of the 13 fires that we've had in the county, or what the captain's describing, is that kind of standard, or is this the first for that?
No, I think there's several occurrences of this happening. Unfortunately, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, we don't have a means of physically tracking this extremely well at this point in time, other than what is being told and what you guys are putting in your reports, right? So to help us track that, please put that in your incident unit reports.
So
right?
from unit officers,
Yeah.
as a unit officer, you want me in the front of engine 716 to call the hazmat officer and
Yeah.
say, look, I think I have this, or the battalion chief,
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
you might not need to dispatch me, Cap, but you and I can have a consult. You
Okay.
can call me on the
And
phone,
you
you
would
can call me on
track
the
it
radio.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
real quick on that, Chief Browning put in the chat that they have a setup now in Crystal reports to gather statistics on incidents where the cause is entered as batteries. So
Good.
when you
So
do,
if I hit that,
when
that,
you
it
yeah,
generates
from
an
what I'm
additional-
reading,
Which is
basically when
huge.
you indicate that as the source.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a huge
Or the
tracking
cause.
method for us.
Yep.
So obviously, we're seeing an uptick, right?
Well, if he wasn't, I guess my thing would be if he wasn't in the room, or nobody was in the room when this happened, yet we extinguish it, now we find multiple points of origin, if you will, does that,
Yeah, so if you want to show that picture right there, so this right here is an example of one of the spent cells, basically. It's that gold piece that you see, and basically that gold is wrapped in this cylindrical cell, and that's what it looks like. That is all over the place in this apartment. And then if you want to go to that one picture of the actual empty cell, so you can kind of see what you're looking at. So
so this is an empty
that
cell.
is an empty cell. That cell is already discharged and has already
So I
expelled
could
everything.
potentially find these in
Yeah.
overhaul
Yep.
Yeah.
or something
Yep.
like that, and I'm going, oh, I have an idea of what might have started this
Yeah,
fire.
and that right there, that we're not really worried about that. That's already done what it needed
Yeah.
to do, right? So it's the ones that have the caps, the end caps still on them. That's the worrisome. Those are the things that the hazmat company is going to come in and overpack when they have those end caps on, and those are the ones we need to be checking for, right? Because later on, when the companies come in there, if we don't look for all those individual cells everywhere, we don't want to come back later on that night, or 2 days later, or a week later, when one of those unspent cells is in a cushion somewhere and lights a couch off, several days later.
But there is no way to know how many of those are in any one battery. It's
No.
all
There's not.
I mean,
amperage or
right,
draw dependent
I
or
mean, just,
whatever.
so I would say, like, use some common sense, right? Like, these are about the size of a shotgun shell, right? A little bit smaller. And so if you can think about what the size of that is, how many of those are actually fitting into certain things?
Okay.
Right? So like I go back to the M18 batteries that we have, the Milwaukee batteries, there's 18 of them in there. right?
Okay.
So that gives you an idea of what you're dealing with, and how many we actually have, potentially, right?
Well, if you're on a call with an electric scooter or something like that inside the apartment, you could take a
Right.
guess that that battery pack obviously
Hundreds.
contain a
Maybe a
lot
bit larger.
more.
Right.
Yeah,
cells.
right?
Yep.
And they take longer, right?
Right.
So the larger it is, the longer it's going to last.
I think it's about, about the interview too, like you're saying, what were you charging here? And
Right.
although I had camera equipment over here, I had a laptop, or, we had 3 scooters by the front door. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a completely
Yeah.
different game.
So,
That's
So
what
I'm
it's
really
about.
going to pause.
Yep.
I want to pause there and bring you in, Captain, about the hazmat team leader, right? So you said it's important for us to know this.
yeah.
Tell me why.
So a couple things to discuss. First of all, is were these cells involved in the fire, or were these cells caused by the fire, right? Every house now has them in there, right? Your grandmother's got a cell phone, right? So from there to the kids of today, to e-cigs, to bikes, to, you name it, has some sort of a battery in it, right? So the ability to track and see where these things are trending, again, we talked or mentioned a
I
little
didn't even
bit
think
earlier.
of that, the trending. Yeah.
Right, is chargers, right? Why go out and buy a Dell charger when you can get onto Amazon and buy an aftermarket charger? Well, we're finding problems with aftermarket chargers. Aftermarket batteries, your laptop battery. Why go buy a Dell battery when you can get an aftermarket battery for a lot cheaper? Again, is this a trend? Is this something that's not regulated that's causing an issue or a problem? We could kind of track this stuff and hopefully at some point, hold the industry accountable for these type of events and incidents.
So here I am on engine 716. I see what Captain Riley just saw. Multiple points of origin, some spent shells. Shells, right?
Cells.
Cells.
Yep.
They look like spent shells.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
look like spent shells. They're,
Don't be confused.
what do I do with my hands? Okay, so here I am. I consult with HMO,
Yep.
the on-duty HMO. What kind of information do you want?
Well-
Why do you want it, and what can you do for me in Silver Spring?
So give me an idea what you're finding, right? Is it a laptop? We're dealing with a laptop battery. I have the ability to overpack that and remove that from the building, right?
And
We ha-
that's a hazmat team specific thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I going to help as Company 16?
So I can initially, especially if there's going to be a delay in response. Captain Riley had talked about that at one point they ran an incident where they put it in an overhaul or salvage bucket and put kitty litter in there.
Would
right?
you make that suggestion to me?
Sure.
I mean, would I think of that, or would I consult with you prior to doing that?
I'm not opposed to you doing that, right?
Oh.
Taking the
Bring a
initiative.
salvage bucket up here and all the absorbent.
Yeah, so do me a favor, right? When you do that, it's not going down in the elevator car, right? It's going to be one of those things that you guys are going to take out via the stairwell. And we have an interim policy in the SOG currently in the Hazmat team that will be coming out, and we'll be sharing more through some resources that we're making available to you guys as the first responders. That's going to go down the stairwell. We may require, and it requires you to have hand lines or water in place to protect that as it goes down the
Is
stairs.
this going to be an appendix to the IRP?
I don't know as at that portion yet.
Okay.
I know it's in an SOG for the Hazmat team.
Okay.
But we will be seeing further on that. Again, some of the resources that we have out there. Get it out of the building, especially if they're unspent cells, because there is the potential it's going to go off at any time, right? Very unstable, potentially very unstable.
Are we thinking about doing this prior to FEI even?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. 'Cause
So it's an
again-
early concern. If fire's out, I have a, everybody on SCBA, PPE and all of that, right?
Yes.
So one of the things we discussed that day, right, was we moved a lot of stuff to look for these cells that were not spent. Meaning we moved the furniture around, we flipped the cushions over, we moved tables. Well, who doesn't like that?
Yeah.
When there's a fire. FEI doesn't like that, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things we discussed was if you can, take some pictures prior to doing that, right? Because they want to know how it was set up. They want to know what it was. And when they walk in the room and they see everything, was this joint ransacked? And is that what caused the fire? Did somebody like this because it's ransacked and there's multiple different points of origin now? So we discussed that, and Chief Browning, that was one of our recommendations, to take some pictures of the scene.
So I guess this is why it's important to even have a simple consult with you, right? I mean, I don't know any of this stuff.
Yeah, even if you don't need us to come down, Cap, call me, right? Call us and have that conversation with the HMO,
Okay.
right? And ask questions. Hey, or let us know what you're seeing so we can make that informed, educated decision whether or not that we need to come down to the scene. Because if we do come down and overpack it, we're going to contact MDE, and we're working with some potential other vendors at this time for the
This
removal and
becomes a
disposal.
pretty significant
Yeah.
process.
And elongates the amount of time on incident scenes for this, right? So the sooner you notify me, the sooner I can call MDE and get them on the street, decreasing the amount of time we're spending there.
All right, so probability of hazmat coming down, is it kind of case by case?
Pretty
Is
high.
it-
Actually, it's pretty high.
Okay.
We're likely to come about it. We're still learning a lot about this. We are still working with it and building some best practices. And as we do that, I think that it's important to have us there to kind of work through that and also created that education environment for those on scene. Hey, this is what we got, this is what we found, this is what we're doing, and here's why.
So what does that, we keep using this term overpack, right?
Sure,
Kind of tell me what that means.
sure. if you guys can go to the picture real quick of the can with the cell block material in it. Here, so basically, we have a bucket, if you would, there's like you see here.
This is on 7's hazmat unit.
Yep, and I have one on 28's hazmat unit currently as well, and we're looking at a couple other containment vessels, if you would, right? And this material is called cell block. It's a glass type material. And basically what we do is we'll put those unspent cells, whether it be from that DeWalt battery, Milwaukee battery, to your cell phone battery, to your laptop battery. We'll put it in there. We'll basically pour more material on top of it. And what happens is if that battery at any point in time while we're moving it or while it sits in that material goes into a thermal runaway, it'll melt that product and encapsulate that cell or those cells, right?
So this looks pretty small. I mean, how do I cram a scooter in that
So
thing?
that right there, that's from the fire on Chevy Chase Drive. And that had 6 cells and 2 laptops in it.
In there.
Inside there, yeah.
So would you remove the battery from the laptop, or would you cram the whole laptop in there?
Some you can't.
Some you can't, right? The one, and we have pictures of it if you show that, the laptop fire that we had, where we actually did take the cells out of it and we did overpack it in that container, right?
Is there a
Again,
top on this thing, on that
No.
lid?
Nope.
So,
We have a blanket that we also have available to us that we can put on there. We have pillows that we can put on there. Again, the special material to make
do we
it
have any
safe.
pictures of one going into thermal runaway after it's been overpacked? Did we bring? Oh, okay.
No, there's none of it going, once it's been overpacked. But one of the things MDE will do is they actually can contain this and put a lid on it. And these cell block containers have actually like a little gap in between that if it does go in a thermal runaway inside this container, it's able to expel that energy. That way it doesn't explode the container that
Levy.
it's in. Yeah, kind of.
Levy style.
Almost. Wow.
Yeah, almost.
That was pretty good.
I'm trying.
Spot
I'm
for
digging
you at-
way back here.
Spot for you at 7 now.
Wow.
No.
So here, if they want to show that video. of
Okay.
that.
So this is actually, hold on, before we show, let's set this kind of up. This, Bob, if you would,
Sure.
set this video up.
So Brian put together actually a real good training.
He's not on the hazmat team anymore. I'm not giving him credit for anything.
We should. I'm trying to bring him back. He's denying there as well. But he put together great training on it. And what we did is we physically went and caused these cells to go into thermal runaway and eventually fail. Just so people have the opportunity to see that before it buzzes across in front of you on the incident scene.
Any time frame, any temperatures associated with this?
No,
This
it varies
This is a
all
hot
the
plate
time.
in the gravel
Hot
here
plate.
at the training school.
Yep, let it go.
And this is a good example because we did individual ones, and Jens will see this, that when it's put together, it'll basically explode, and they go everywhere, and that's kind of what you're dealing with. And you'll kind of see this happen. It takes time. There was no set time limit. There was no set time that it was going to do this at this point or whatever at this temperature. We didn't find anything
You can see it's starting to
conclusive.
off gas.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, it's completely inconsistent.
It is. It is.
So,
So they had a Tesla that was involved in an accident 3 weeks ago that just burned up the other day, sitting in the junkyard by itself and decided to burn up 3 weeks later.
so this is an hour, some minutes sitting
One-
on the hot plate? Is that?
1 minute,
Okay.
1 minute,
Oh, this is just a
25
minute.
seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
I can
obviously,
see it.
yeah, and that's obviously direct heat on the battery. So we're forcing this to occur.
Okay.
But there's, I believe it was 3 or 4 cells that we taped together, just to give the example.
So not unlike the Milwaukee.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them, not
Yeah,
18 of them.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
And I mean, the biggest takeaway, I guess, from this is that violent explosion basically is what you're going to see.
And that
that's
predictability.
right. And that's
right?
what you're dealing with. I mean, we just happened to be in the room when this happened. You know, I mean,
You did.
Right. Yeah.
And 6.
And Company 6,
and-
yeah. And Lieutenant Morton, he said immediately once he saw it too, that he knew, right? Like, okay, I know what I'm dealing with here.
It's safe to say that the awareness is already there. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
non-hazmat officer. And
Right.
It's
out there.
It's not just that you're aware of it because you were a hazmat officer and happened to be there. It
Right.
was-
Yeah, and like I said, even doing the training, giving the training, setting this training up,
It was still,
it was still an eye-opening experience, right? That see something fly across
Yeah.
right in front of you
Especially
on
once the
fire.
fire's knocked down and
Right.
you're not expecting it.
Yeah, you don't expect additional things to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if they can speed it up some or not. Yeah, so we sat there and watched this with a thermal imager. We had,
What kind of temperatures might you've got? Do you recall?
I don't,
I mean, it's been off gassing since almost the beginning. I don't know if that's just
Yeah.
the casing on those cells
yeah.
or what, but I mean.
And you gotta
there's
remember,
some
that's just a
form of-
rubber, like
Yeah.
a rubber sealant.
And when the cell actually off gases, it's more of like a pressurized, like
Yeah.
you'll see, I guess,
Yeah.
like,
It blows those end caps off.
okay. And before it like violently explodes though, I guess you
Yeah.
might see some of that like pressurized
Yep.
off gassing.
Yep, there you go. So you can see that one cell's on fire over there to the left. And then the other one goes to the right.
And that's
This is
contained
3
in-
cells.
Three
And that's
cells.
contained in that box.
Yeah.
Right? So the amount of, that box kept it right there. That amount of pressure, amount of force, how far is that launching that thing?
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm just kind of putting this in perspective here. So that's 3. The Milwaukee batteries that we carry on the trucks, Brian, you're a truck guy,
18.
is 18. And how many of those batteries do we carry on a ladder truck?
Oh,
Right.
shoot, 20-some, I think is what
Yeah.
you have on your truck at Company 16.
I'm trying to ride it, buddy. I'm trying. So even in the firehouses, this is
It's there.
potentially a concern,
Yeah.
right?
Truck 31 had an incident
With its Milwaukee batteries?
with its Milwaukee batteries. You see the pictures here, if you could put them up.
Was this an overheating event? Was this
Yes.
a defective battery? Do we not know?
So it's hard to tell.
Okay.
Again, and we mentioned a little bit earlier, aftermarket chargers, right? We saw the charger in the picture of the fire that Brian ran, right? Was it caused by, was that an aftermarket charger? Was that a manufacturer charger? We don't know offhand, right? So again, something like that.
Portables,
Yeah, portable batteries.
Everything. Look at the Sonom phones.
Sonom phones.
How many people have had issues with a Sonom phone, bulging up?
Right,
Do we, or was that because maybe we're leaving it plugged in all the time, or
That's
do
what
we?
they're saying.
yes. Right, overcharging, right,
Yeah,
in all essence.
yeah.
So I have one question. It's kind of related to the specific incident. I guess you're really related to that. But the question was, I don't think there's a definitive answer. It might, probably opinion based. But how much protection would structural gear provide for an exploding or flying battery cell? I mean, I guess especially since you guys have witnessed it up close. Like,
Yeah,
what's your opinion?
I mean, it's, I think of it as, right, we've all been on fires where people have stored shotgun shells or ammunition and stuff like that, and you hear them shooting off, bouncing off the wall sometimes, just the end caps kind of deal. I don't know if it's going to penetrate, right? Like, I don't know that answer.
And it's momentary
Yeah.
contact, right?
Yeah.
It's not like it's sticking to your fire gear and burning like a road flare or something,
Yeah.
right?
But that
Well-
explosion was pretty violent.
Yeah.
because those-
I mean, that's a good point too, though, because with this, I mean, it's a flammable metal
Yes.
essentially, right? So when you hit a block of magnesium with a hose line, you get a violent reaction, right? It's water reactive. So, I mean, in the case where you directed a solid stream of water at potentially a large cell, and you were close enough, would you get that same? I mean, we all seen like a piece of
No.
road flare, or magnesium, or something land and burn the Scotch light on your gear or whatever. Would something like that happen with the way the makeup is with these?
I don't believe so.
Cells?
I mean,
Again, not that hurts you, but
Yeah.
you can see that happen,
Yeah.
right? I
But you
mean,
can't also say never.
Right.
It's never going to happen. We can't. we
Yeah,
can't just-
I guess I don't know if there's
Yeah.
any research
Sure.
on that or anything
yeah, I don't,
yet.
I don't know if there is anything
Not that
out
I've
there.
seen.
Well, so talking of extinguishment, what's the best method for extinguishment?
So cooling it, right? Obviously, water, maintain it, keep it in that cooled environment. There's talk about taking the cell out and putting it in the bathtub, right? We're in the 13th floor of the high rise, whatever, right? And cooling that to a point where you're not seeing any change in temperature for a point about 45 minutes.
Well, that
Right.
Tesla that was sitting in the parking lot, does that not,
So one of the things that
I mean, let's go back to the episodes before.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about the thermal runaway last episode, right? Remind us of what we talked about.
So one of the biggest things, right, with these thermal runaway is we don't know. It's an unknown. Go back to that Tesla, right? So that Tesla was involved in an accident 3 weeks prior, and then they go and put it at this junkyard or salvage yard or whatever, and it just catches on fire, right? That stored energy is just sitting there. I don't know.
And we don't really encapsulate a vehicle.
No.
Right?
No.
No.
How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the hazmat unit does have
The blanket.
Blanket.
Right? But again, how bad was the car accident?
Right.
Was there any indication that would make me even think, right, to look at a battery, the battery cells in that? Fender bender, why would I look at that? You know, any significant impact or something along that lines, or you're finding damage that may indicate there's a potential, sure, then we should be looking at that, right, with a thermal imager and trying to determine if there's any indication of overheating at that point in time, right? Then address it there.
So another question that just came in that I kind of have too is it relates to encapsulating. The question just asks kitty litter or water. I guess like what's the preference? Is there a preference
So
whether it's
I would say-
overpacking the kitty litter or putting it in the tub of water, or is there a better?
So we did that as a way to get it out, a means to get it out of the apartment, right?
Right.
That's what we.
The salvage bucket and absorb
Yes,
it.
yeah, that's what we chose to do. The correct way is to do the cell block, right?
Yeah.
However, you got to go with what you got at that time.
Right. Again, if the hazmat team's not there and we
Right.
have to do something, if I have to do something as an officer or Brady or whoever, is the what is
I
is
think
there one single preference? or
No,
just-
I think it all depends on where you are, right? Like, if you're on the second floor of a two-story house or
Right.
or the first floor, it makes sense, right? Get it out the window,
Right.
real
It's easy.
quick.
It's like it's a smoldering mattress, right?
Right.
Like why? Yeah.
Right.
Why would I leave it?
But if you're
Not
on
cram it in the elevator.
Right.
Take it down.
But if you're
course, yeah.
on the 15th floor, then you might have to come up with a plan, and that might be one of those things that, hey, I'm on the phone with Hazmat as they're coming down the road. Hey, look, we need to get this out of the house, right?
Which is why we need to
Right.
get a hold of.
Right.
And in the case of your incident, 7 was on the fire.
Yep.
28 was on a different call.
Yeah, I mean, heads
right?
up, Captain
So the hazmat
Sanchez.
response
Yeah.
component of it isn't an option.
Yeah, Captain Sanchez was on 10's engine, and they were dispatched as extra to fill the assignment for somebody. And he went over there and said, hey, I'll go get the hazmat. At least we'll bring it here to the scene, right? So, and that's
So
what
it's
happened.
probably a good reason to know who your hazmat officers are,
Absolutely.
right?
Or just additional resources.
Even your overtime guys.
Right,
I
or,
mean,
or a driver.
Yes.
Yeah, it's situational awareness for everybody, though,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
you're the officer at 20 or whatever, right, a hazmat station or 25 or whoever has hazmat personnel, and you hear this kind of stuff going on, I mean, that's something that
Yep.
you'd be doing. Even if I worked at 20, I could work at 20 as a non-hazmat officer.
Correct.
And that, just have that situational awareness. Like one of the hazmat guys, hey, this is going on. If they're not paying attention or whatever,
You might have to go get the
Right,
hazmat.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And at least bring it to the
Get the
scene,
unit to
bring
the
the
scene.
resources to the scene.
Right.
it goes to show, like, pick up a radio and listen to the box alarm, right?
Yeah.
As any company officer, like, anything can happen kind
Pretty
of
good
thing, and you
point.
might be able to make a difference.
Yep.
yeah. All right, so the hazmat team gets there. I'm sorry, Matty. You
No,
gotta go.
so it was just pointed out that in the chat that basically with whatever we're doing, kitty litter, water, bathtub, hose line, is you're not trying to put it out, right?
No.
You're just trying to cool it enough to prevent additional thermal runaway.
Right.
Yep.
that was-
And just always.
point of emphasis.
And when we're dealing with this, right? So on our scenario, on our incident, both the personnel were wearing full PPE. SCBA was on. The one person was carrying the bucket as the second person was behind with an extinguisher, in theory, just to knock a flame down.
Protect them,
Right.
basically.
And then we had hose lines above, at the top, at the third floor and at the lowest level, right? And
So
that
now
was-
coordinating becomes
Yeah,
another
yeah. And-
manpower
and that's-
intensive.
Yes.
on that scene, that's where we switched from being the engine company basically to, okay, now we're being a hazmat resource on the scene.
And so we're not overly concerned with the thermal runaway outside.
Now,
It's the inside that.
Sure.
it's all about exposure, right?
What's the
Protecting your
smoke
exposure.
that's coming off of this?
So the biggest one to worry about is the hydrogen fluoride.
Okay.
We so we'll talk about that. Calcium gluconate is what we carry on the hazmat units. It's an ALS skill, the ability to deal with that, whether it be burns or inhalation-related injuries. Hazmat units, the battalion chiefs, the EMS duty officers, and the dock chiefs carry the calcium gluconate both in a paste, if you would, and then a IV material that's going to be pushed through our the new Sapphire pumps that are being carried by the ALS resources now.
That's pretty good, the
See
way
that? Yep.
he tied all that together.
See that?
Yeah, I
Even
did.
put the EMS
I did.
component in there.
I did.
So, again, chemical burns, right? This burns right to the bone that quick.
Yeah.
Right, so it's something that we physically could deal with that through the paste component of it, and then the inhalation component of that as well, dealt with via IV therapy, because it may cause a systemic issues as well in those coming in contact with that.
What do I have to monitor the atmosphere after Captain Riley put this fire out in Bethesda, right?
Yeah.
And
Company 6 did.
I'm sorry, Company 6. So, and which is even better because
Yeah.
I don't want to use engine 707. What does engine 706 have that they can monitor the atmosphere?
So they're for gas, right?
Okay.
The meters that we all carry,
Okay.
right, on every heavy out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important, right? Because again, even if we don't have the active fire component of it, getting readings on our meters that you and I are going to look at, right? Or you guys are going to look at, is going to give me some indications that something's going on. It might not pinpoint necessarily right off the get-go that I'm dealing with a cell or a battery related incident, but we're going to see some meter readings, right? Obviously, we're going to notice LEL readings on meters. Okay, we may notice elevated CO readings and or a decrease in oxygen levels in the environment that we're dealing with. Again, giving me an indication or a red flag that, hey, something's going on here.
Really kind of a case to say, hey, just because the fire's out doesn't mean I can rip off my SCBA.
Sure. And in reality, Cap, I think the fire component of it's probably safer, right? Because a lot of the stuff is burning off. It's hot enough, it's burning that stuff off. It's when we get into
The smoldering that we saw in the video.
Right. It's when we get into, kind of breaking down and cleaning up and overhaul where it's more of a problem.
Okay.
Because it's not being heated enough to burn that stuff off. And that's when we tend to be a little bit more relaxed and looking to potentially get out of the air pack and stuff like that. With this in there, that might be more.
And this is something our safety officers are looking for as well,
Sure.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So we get the stuff out of the building. What happens then?
So MDE is currently our state vendor who has the capacity and capability of removing and disposing of this stuff from the incident scene.
And they bring various sizes of overpack,
Sure, capabilities and
pots,
capacity.
drums,
Yeah.
trucks, trailers, whatever.
Yep.
And they take it away and it
Yeah.
stops.
So that's a phone call, right? Generally either from me or command, right? As the hazmat team, hazmat officer will make that phone call. Sometimes the battalion chief or on scene, whoever command may be, has that capacity or capability as well. But try to do that early, like we mentioned earlier, because
Lead time.
yeah, we're looking at 30 to 45 minutes to get out of Baltimore to the scene, right? On a good day.
Yeah.
Put rush hour into it, and you're looking at even farther out than that,
Yeah.
right? So as much lead time as we could provide them, that would help us out a ton.
What about a vehicle? I mean, we talked about this Tesla. So here I am in Captain Riley at Company 2's on a medical local in Prince George's County. So I go to a vehicle fire in Tacoma Park. And it's a Tesla. Am I still calling the hazmat team and saying, hey, this Tesla was
Yeah,
involved?
we bring-
So any battery, really, I'm reaching out.
Some sort of a conversation between you and I.
Okay, and are there anything associated with these vehicles or scooters? Like, I gotta stay there until something happens with this
Yes.
battery.
Yeah. So again, 45 minutes is that magic number, right? You have to maintain some sort of a eye on this thing to monitor temperature changes and stuff like that. We get the fire knocked, we're comfortable, under control, 45 minutes.
Okay.
After the fire.
After the fire is
Seeing
extinguished.
nothing.
Yes. So 39
Are the
minutes.
county police, so let's use the example of a vehicle fire. Is this something that, I'm telling the county police, hey, no, we can't tow this thing off of
Yeah.
the side of 495. We're going to sit here and close these two lanes or this lane
Yeah.
for a 45-minute span, and then we're going to allow you to tow it?
Yeah. 45 minutes if nothing happens.
Yeah, I think
You
you're
get-
going to have to work with them.
So, yeah, this is a conversation that
Yeah,
we
and-
need to be prepared to
and-
have
and like-
with the state
And like
police
we
or
also-
county police.
We also discussed before, like a tow truck. Who's putting a Tesla that's burned up
Oh, I don't know.
on their flatbed tow truck, right? That's
Right.
their livelihood. And I mean, are they willing to risk that?
Is that a problem that you've been, I mean,
We don't know.
I don't really know if
I mean,
it's my
something
responsibility.
I would have thought. I mean, if I would have run a bird scooter or something like that, sitting on the side of the sidewalk.
Put it out and roll out.
I'd do the same thing. So that's not. I mean, again, it sounds dumb.
Not
Is
now.
that not right?
No, I mean, it needs to be overpacked because you don't know
Yeah.
what cells are left that haven't done what they're going to do, right? That are
And
sitting
we're not
waiting.
investigating
No.
those on those
No.
cells.
No, but that's a hazmat response to overpack and MDE to take away.
It's a good sell to get more hazmat officers.
I caught you that sell.
No,
Both
no.
sell? You want to be one?
I got enough stuff going on. Okay, so wait, and I guess another good reason why we're gonna bring the hazmat team. You can give me this advice, right?
But treat it, like we've said previously, treat these fires as fires first, right? If a Tesla is on fire, treat it as an auto fire. You're still gonna do the same tactics that you would on a normal auto fire, right? It's the after the fact of cooling those cells.
Are there
keeping
issues
it cool.
getting to those cells?
Yeah, absolutely.
With Teslas? I mean,
Absolutely.
they're designed to be weatherproof, waterproof,
Well, that,
right?
they're underneath, right?
It's the floor pan of your car,
Yeah.
right?
So, do you have a suggestion?
Well, you have a nozzle on your engine company, at company 16.
I do, yes, but
There you go.
you don't it too.
No,
Nor do I at 28.
right. So the battalion-based stations do, and company 16. So you have that option there to cool
As,
underneath.
another option,
Yeah.
call in additional
Yeah,
resources.
and then, like I said, then you can go back to the hazmat company who has, the big blanket that they can put over top.
So is there a place, Bob, that I can, as a company officer working wherever, can
Yeah.
I get where do I get these resources?
So Chief McDonald put together a link, helped assist in putting together a link that's on our MDCs. So that's something that you have currently, right? We are currently working on, through management, to develop also some access through quick links through the operations section under special ops that'll provide more definitive and more information for you.
Okay. So, MDCs.
Yeah,
Additional info.
currently, yep.
All right, excellent. Any additional questions there?
Yeah, there's a couple more points just put in the chat about, overpacking and a couple notes about tow trucks potentially starting to get roll-offs to deal with this stuff.
Just coming from Chief Browning?
Or
just
Chief
general
Browning put
chat?
the Crystal Reports thing, and the Chief Ogren put a couple of these things about overpacking, a couple of general chats.
Are we helping with the overpack? Is that something that we as fire department
Yeah.
would do?
Yeah, you can help.
Just being nice guys to MDE?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, we're going to overpack as much as we can on the incident scene.
How much, what's the size of overpack that you have that we have? I'm
So that
sorry.
silver bucket that we saw.
Uh-huh. That looks
is-
like about the size of a crab pot.
Yeah.
Not overly
It's
large.
not huge. And then we're working on some additional potential, drums and stuff like that to.
Like
to overpack
55-gallon
larger-
drums.
to Overpack larger stuff like that, right? So like a scooter battery isn't likely to fit in that vessel right there, right?
So the
Vessel,
scooter, scooter fire that they had in Silver Spring,
Yep,
they had to actually overpack in the 55-gallon
55 gallon drum, correct.
is what they used.
Yep.
So MDE
Yeah.
brought those to the scene.
Because that was prior to us even having any cell block.
So if we can get that battery module out of that scooter, right? I don't want to pack an entire scooter, right? So if we can get that out of there, and again, that's going to be in coordination with the truck company, the hazmat team, that type of thing. If we can cut that out of that scooter to make it more.
We're almost thinking down an entire new avenue here, right?
Yeah.
Really, with these batteries. I mean,
Right.
we're changing course a little bit.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, I think the important thing to remember is that we're not really changing anything from the outset, right? Like the firefighting operation,
afterwards.
Six's area, right? Like
everything after.
everything, we're still the same tactical priorities, same everything else, just about recognizing that and then
Yeah,
I guess
identify.
the recovery phase of the operation or whatever you want to call it, right? Overhaul into the recovery
Yeah,
phase. just has to be-
identify and knowing your
right.
resources.
Has to be different and it's going to be just longer than
Yeah.
than it was and take a different course.
yep.
Well, anything else on the chat?
No, just another point about, obviously multiple manufacturers making these batteries. There's been battery recalls, which, again, we know, like we said, these batteries are everywhere, not only just cars, whether it's Ford, Tesla, all the other companies, out there making them, Chevy, it's, they are everywhere, so. you
Including
never-
on the apparatus
yeah.
we're riding around?
Right, you
in?
never know where you're gonna see it or encounter a problem. So, yeah, that's it. No other questions or anything.
Let's see.
So, as a company officer, if you can remove a little bit of your hazmat component from it or background, what would you do anything different on this event or provide different input to your firefighters?
No, I think, the biggest thing is identifying it, right? And I think like Maddie said, we are getting the word out,
Yeah.
right? Like, I really feel like a lot of the companies, all the members are kind of saying, yeah, this is happening, right? We're seeing it. If you follow any fire department, anything on Instagram or FaceSpace or any social media type event, it's out there on there, right? So I think we're seeing this, being able to identify it, and like I said, knowing the resources, like who you can call to come assist with this, right? And that MDE ahead of time, because it's going to take time. We were on that scene probably for a good 6 hours. And, you know, that's a company out of service for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Babysitting some batteries in a bin.
And we were talking about it before. I mean, this has been happening for a long time. This isn't
Absolutely.
new. I mean, you remember
Yes.
when there was that whole Panasonic phone thing for a
Yeah.
while where they, like, again, 10 years ago or whatever.
Or
they
the
weren't letting-
hoverboards.
Yeah, the hoverboards.
Right.
We were talking earlier, we ran one scooter on the side of somebody's house that was charging maybe 8 years ago or so. Then that was obvious looking back on it now, what was happening. We see it off gassing, and it's like kind of one cell at a time, basically burning. This guy just doesn't know what to do about it and called the firehouse. We were on like a service call.
Yeah, I think
Looking
it's
back
that
on
now.
it, that's what was happening.
Right, but I think now it's the
So
amount,
prevalent, right, yeah.
I mean, we have them, like you take, like I always say, you take your house, just take your house alone, right? Everybody's got razors, everybody's got a electric toothbrush now, everybody has cell phones, everybody has a laptop, kids have everything, you know? So it's there.
Yeah.
Right, and it's everywhere. So I think we just have them everywhere now.
And I think the situational awareness component of it is, right? If you have multiple fires, unexplained multiple fires, put it that way, right?
Yeah.
What's the likelihood of having this
Under the
dishwasher
dishwasher, yeah.
on fire in this incident? That's not likely.
So,
right? There's
so
something.
one thing too that as company officers need to know, if you have a fire and there's a lithium-ion battery, some type of product, whatever it is, if it's in the same vicinity or in that same area as the fire, that's considered damaged now, right? So, for example, on that.
So the heat, the radiant heat.
Yeah, so
Bam.
on that fire, we had two Apple laptops sitting there next to where the share was that we considered them damaged. And
Did
they
you
got.
overpack those and take
Yes,
those out as
so
well?
they got overpack in. And so that's a hard thing to do, right? Because a lot of people, their whole life is on these laptops.
And now we're
everything.
taking them away.
Right. So you just, you need to recognize that and understand if I have a fire in the kitchen because there's food on the stoves that got into the cabinets and everything like that, and that's where you charge your phone or that's where you charge your laptop at, and it was in that same area or quadrant,
Certainly.
that needs to be overpacked, and you need to contact Hazmat. And I'm not trying to get more work for Hazmat, but that's what it's coming to. And anything that is in that same area, it's considered damaged at that point and needs to be overpacked.
Yeah, a point from one of our safety officers too, which, kind of ties into a lot what we're talking about with the overhaul and, change the mindset and stuff. Change the mindset from the food on the stove thoughts, which it's been proven, right, that's could have some deadly chemicals involved with it, right?
Certainly.
Teflon.
But a higher potential for being a battery involved on these routine incidents and that respiratory protection until metered and cleared, which,
So
we
the other
talked
thing
about all
that
those
also
chemicals.
increases is the decon process, right? When you guys are coming out of that building now, we really need to pay attention to that decon, especially with that hydrogen fluoride exposure,
Yeah.
right?
I had a firefighter that was on one of these in Bethesda, and his gear smelled like nothing I'd ever smelled before.
Sure.
The next day,
Yeah.
he worked overtime the night before, came to work, and he couldn't even ride in the fire truck. We made him get,
Yeah.
you got to switch your gear out. It smells that bad.
Yeah, so the recommendation is soap, water, decon of the gear at this point, right? Obviously, personal decon, get out of that equipment as soon as you can. The wipes that we carry on the units in the red
Yeah.
buckets, right? We got to go through that whole process here because these chemicals are causing issues.
All right, so two very last questions for you, Bob. You do a lot of traveling, both taking classes and instruction. Are other around the country, are other agencies, other organizations kind of experiencing the same thing we are?
Yeah, New York City is seeing it through astronomical levels, right?
Are they the kind of the
Daily.
leaders here?
Yeah, they're running multiple a day of these incidents. And as you go around, again, they're seeing them more and more because there's more and more out there.
Yeah.
Right? And again, I think the cheaper route to get chargers, to get batteries, is the way everybody's going to go. So I think it's going to only going to expand from here.
All right.
It really is.
So Hazmat, and again, this is ever evolving,
Sure.
right? So when was your event Brian? When was that?
July,
So here, this summer.
yeah,
Yeah.
June.
What would you do? What different would you do today than you did in July? Would you give him any or me any different advice than?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think, again, it's.
Early
It's
recognition,
changing, early
yeah.
recognition, early reaching out, of the, getting resources and paying attention to that. The fire was out in this case when this incident occurred, right?
We were there for another
So
5
the-
hours and 45
Right.
minutes.
The fire's out, but the incident isn't over.
Yeah.
Right, until that's removed from the atmosphere, that environment, and disposed of. Right? The car, 3 weeks later, catches on fire.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you do about that, those fire department? How do we deal
There's
with
not.
that?
There's
There's nothing
not.
that I know
Right.
that we.
Yeah, there was one more question that just came in kind of related.
Okay.
Again, I'm curious too, because with that scooter example, I would have left the thing on the curb before today, probably, once we put it out. Where does the 45-minute number come from after an EV or just a battery
So that-
incident? Is
that-
that
that
a
was
hard
a-
and fast thing, or because
So-
he cited it
Yeah.
was 3 weeks
So
since
it's
the
in
car
the-
catches on fire.
It's in the hazmat special ops policy.
Right.
Okay.
However, that is a recommendation, and you got to remember, a lot of what we built in our policy came from the fire department in New York's policy, just because they're doing it. They are running a lot of
And
it.
like we talked about, this is an evolving thing that
Right.
we're
And-
just now gathering statistics about. And just
Yeah,
learning.
and who knows if that's the right number or not, right? Like, we don't know.
So the best course of action as an officer, hey, call the hazmat team. You're going to give me that information if you think it's
Yeah.
pertinent to what I'm dealing with on the scene of the call, basically. Okay.
And that number can change tomorrow, right? It could be an hour tomorrow, it
Yeah.
could be 30 minutes tomorrow,
Right.
it could, so again, right now, industry standard.
We're learning as we go still.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, guys, thank you very much for coming
Yeah,
in.
thank you, guys.
We
Really good information.
appreciate it. I do have a couple of more things really before we close out. I didn't do this in the beginning, and I apologize. CCOs. The COPDI sign-in form has changed a little bit. Its location is in the same spot, but the form has changed. So don't forget to sign in if you're a CCO and want COPDI credit. Our next Challenges in the Street is November 13th. It will be about chimney fires, tactical considerations for chimney fires, brought to us by Battalion Chief Davis. So that'll be very interesting. And then there is on December 16th, let's put that slide up. This is really important. This went away for a couple of years. It is now back. For those of you that don't know or don't remember, Carlos Alfaro Sr. and Jr. Worked for the fire department. The Alfaros have been involved with Montgomery County Fire Department for generations, I would guess.
Yeah.
So they do have a blood drive. They had a blood drive in the past. This year, it is coming back. COVID put a stop to that for a little bit, but it's coming back. It is here at the training school on December 16th from 8 to 2. I've given in the past. I plan on giving this year, and I really hope that you all out there watching give as well. The thing to add to this is you got to sign up, I believe, to give. Is that correct? Yeah, schedule your donation.
Yep.
So go online, sign up for it. It's a great cause. And it is back, and I'm assuming it will continue. I would guess it is going to continue to be year after year. And then I got a little story to tell. I'm kind of a storyteller.
It's 1400, so you only got.
I got it.
48
So
seconds.
we're going to run a little late, maybe. In 2019, a guy came to me with an idea to put on a YouTube series. We spitballed back and forth for a couple of years and came up with challenges or less than a year probably, came up with challenges in the streets. And since then, it has grown into a Boss Talks and a From the Command Post. And still, there is one additional thing that I believe that Chief Davis is trying to do. I'm proud to say that we've had 62 episodes between those three programs. And today is my last episode. I've had a great time developing it. I've had a phenomenal time delivering it. I've learned a ton of stuff and interacted with a lot of great people. But I want to hand the show to the next person. The next person, if you haven't figured it out now, is Captain Machala. He will now be the new moderator for Challenges in the Streets, Boss Talk, and you will help with From the Command Post, you and Chief Cooper. So welcome and thank you. That is really it. Thanks for everything, everybody, and until next time, be safe.